Today I want to talk about the many ways in which your dignity is stripped from you when you um, are an immigrant. So when you first arrive, you go to immigration and they ask you the purpose of your visit. So to illustrate, I'll give you an example of what happened when I arrived. Like I said, came before you needed a visa to come to go to the UK. So I went and I said I was there to visit family. I had a family member who was living in the UK, and she had sent me an invitation letter. And so they didn't ask me a lot of questions because I had an address that I was going to. I had an invitation letter. I'd been advised to dress well, which I did, even though my dressing, my choice of outfit was very inappropriate. I was dressed for summer. It was winter. It was freezing. And when I got outside, I found out. I found out, if you know what I mean. Anyway, while I was being questioned by immigration, I could see other people who were on neighboring, I suppose, um, immigration stalls being called into back rooms. So I had heard about this. I'd heard about how if you get called into a back room, that's not a good thing. That means that they don't believe your story and they may send you back home immediately. So I saw a young girl about my age. I was 19. She looked about the same age as me, and she was called into a back room. And you could see the reaction of people in line. Our flight had just landed full of people from Zimbabwe, and I think they all knew that if you get called into a back room, that's not a good thing. So, of course, as soon as you arrive, things like that happen, and your dignity is slowly stripped away from you. You are now suffering the humiliation of being called to a back room where now everybody who is watching knows that that's not gone well for her. So, thankfully, I didn't have any problems. I was allowed to go through, and my family was waiting for me, and they took me to where they lived. One thing that I found it's only years later that I reflected on it, and I thought, wow, what was the meaning of this? Because at that time, there were no computers at the immigration booths as you arrive. It would be an immigration officer who had a pedestal, just like they have these days, but there was no computer. He had a little notepad and he just scribbled things on it as I answered my questions. And then he said to me, write down the address of where you're going. And I wrote down the address. My dad had told me to memorize the address, so I had. And I remember at the time when my dad was coaching me how to respond to the immigration questions, I was rolling my eyes, well, not visibly because he would have killed me, but I was rolling my eyes thinking, what does he know? He's never been anywhere. But anyway, literally every question that I was asked, he had coached me to respond to. So I responded correctly and I was allowed to go in. But back to the story of the notepad. When I look back now, I think to myself, what happened to those little notepads? Did they ever get filed? Did they get scanned? Like, what really happened? Nothing was stored electronically as far as I was concerned. It was just a little notepad. And I thought, there's so many thousands of people passing through here every single day from all over the world. Are they really taking these little notepads and storing them somewhere, or do they just walk out at the end of the day and throw them away somewhere? Well, I don't know, but yeah, well, that's what happened back then. So my family was waiting for me. They took me home. And for the first few weeks, I was living with a family member, very kind, very gracious, just the best. I know that many people did not have as easy um, an arrival as I did. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to that family member, because you've all, well, some of you would have heard the horror stories of family members who would starve the people that they were living with, or family members who suddenly wouldn't answer their phone when you've arrived, and then you wouldn't have anywhere to go, or they would take any money you'd arrived with and your passport. So many things would happen to people. And again, all those things strip you of your dignity. Someone takes your passport, they've basically taken away your freedom of movement. You don't have an ID. You can't, how do you move around without a passport? And then somebody takes the money that you've come with and you're in a foreign country. Where do you go? What do you do? Somebody starves you. And if you can afford a ticket to go abroad and fly somewhere, starving is probably not something you've experienced when you're back home. You're probably not doing that badly, So all of a sudden, you're in this foreign country. Your relatives said they would help you land and get settled and everything, but now they've taken your identification documents. They've taken the money that you were supposed to use to get settled in, and maybe they're not helping you find a job when they said they would. They're not helping you access the services that you need to access, whether it's applying for school or whatever it is you need. All those things strip you of your dignity. Meanwhile, nobody at home knows that that's what's happening to you. Or maybe they do, but can they fully understand it? Can they really, truly understand what it is you're going through? Because in most cases, most people that have left, that one person that everybody left behind is thinking, well, now that they're there and the exchange rate is this to that, they can send me 50 pounds. That shouldn't be too much, right? They can send me 50 pounds. They're already planning what they're going to do with your money. So, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so then that happens. I land, I get settled in, I apply for school, I get invited to interviews. And this is important because once you have a letter from a school at that point, back then, once you have a letter from a school saying that they would like you to come and interview, um, if you present that to a potential employer, they'll say, oh, you are a student. Well, I don't think that this was completely accurate. I think some employers were just bending the rules. They would actually offer you employment based on the fact that you're going to interview to go to school. So many people would use those letters to find employment. And here's something else that was really funny. There were certain towns where the population of immigrants was so high that people would make jokes and say, if you land in this town at 8 a.m., you can be at work by 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And even though people said it as a joke, it wasn't a joke. It was true. Some people would land at 8 in the morning, and by 2 p.m., they'd be at work. so, so it makes you think. I started to add 1 plus 1 and come up with 5. Those little notepads at immigration, I don't believe that they were ever filed or scanned or whatever. I may be wrong, but I think sometimes countries recognize their labor needs and they will do whatever they need to do to fill those gaps in labor, especially if you demonstrate when you arrive that you can speak in English, write in English. Therefore, you're asked to write the address on a notepad of where you're going. So you've just demonstrated your English speaking and writing abilities. So you're a very good potential workhorse, someone to join the labor force who can speak English, who can write, So already they're screening you and thinking, yeah, I'll just let this one in. I may believe or not believe that they're coming to visit, but they can speak English, they can write, they can be a part of our labor force. We need labor. Anyway, so yeah, that's where I started to add up and think, okay, I wonder if this is all part of one big plan, where they know they need labor. So when you arrive, they're already thinking, if you look like someone that can join our labor force, we're going to let you in no matter what you say. So, anyway, people would work literally as soon as they arrived back then. And what I found really, really interesting was that there were employment agencies where someone would open an employment agency which was maybe specifically for healthcare, like um, employing people to go and look after the elderly, either in their homes or in nursing homes, or I think it was more difficult for some of those agencies to place people in hospitals, because hospitals were a lot more strict with checks on whether somebody was fully compliant in terms of their immigration to work in the hospital. So if someone was working in a hospital, chances are they were probably fully compliant with their immigration. But when it came to things like jobs in nursing homes or jobs where people looked after the elderly or disabled in their homes, I think the rules were bent just a little bit when it came to that. And then there were also agencies where you would be sent to work maybe at an event as a waiter. And I remember in the city that we were in, some people felt they were too good to do care work, to look after sick people or the elderly. So they would say, I don't do care work, I do silver service. So silver service was working catering events where I'm sure you know what silver service was. So it was considered slightly more skilled in that you had to know how to do it. So the pay was slightly better, but the hours were not great. But some people just felt like they could not go and do care work. It was just beneath them. So they did silver service. That was one of the things that would happen. So that's employment. And then came living conditions. If you've never rented in your life, then all of a sudden you've become a renter. Um, it's it can feel as though your dignity is being stripped away from you again, because if I'm completely honest, when I was growing up, people that rented um, were sort of considered lower, rightly or wrongly, they were. Um, so to be in a situation where you're now renting, and guess what? Not even renting the full house, renting a room and sharing a room. Can you imagine how that feels and how it makes you feel about your standing in this new country? That look where I am. I am now a person that lives in somebody else's house, rents somebody else's house, and not even the full house. I now share a house with strangers, with people I've never met before. And we share a bathroom, we share a kitchen. Yeah, your dignity is slowly but surely being stripped away from you. And it's a time of reflection where you start to think, is it worth it? Why not just go back home? Our house is still there. Trust me, these are things that I considered on a daily basis. Like, I want to go home, but then home was not my house, it was my parents' house. I'm 19 now. I'm having to start my life. I have to start my life. Going back home and saying, I'm back. What then? At what point do you become an adult? At what point do you start your own life and become responsible and pay your own bills and build something for yourself from the bottom up? So, yes, that indignity of being a renter when you've never done it before. I guess I was kind of a renter, a free renter when I lived with my parents as a child, but it's different. Anyway, yes, so that was that. Those are the ways that your dignity is stripped away from you. And then you go to work. You go to work. Um, I remember the first time I went to work looking after the elderly. By then, I was a nursing student. So I looked for a job in a nursing home. And I'll never forget the first time I saw a set of dentures. They were in a little glass of water right by the bedside. And I was terrified. I had never seen dentures before in my life. And I looked at them and I looked terrified. And the lady I was working with, because we would go in pairs to get people out of bed. And this lady I was working with, she said, calm down, calm down. They're dentures. I said, what are dentures? And she explained to me that they were false teeth because they look so real. So they were terrifying. And the way she explained it, I just knew that she had experienced the same terror that I did when she'd first seen them. And then I remember thinking the first time I had to clean someone who was incontinent, the first time I had to do that, I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe this is what I'm doing. I remember thinking, I cannot believe this is my life now. This is my life now. I am now a person who cleans people who are incontinent. And 20, how many years is it now? From 2001. So 25 years later, I still clean people who have been incontinent. I still do bedside nursing in addition to other things. And the way I feel about it now is very different. Now, when I clean someone as a nurse, if I'm working in the ICU and I clean someone who's been incontinent, oddly, I feel a sense of pride because I think to myself, I'm very privileged to be in a position to help someone out in their most vulnerable state. I know that many people may not relate, but I know some nurses will. Um, there's an odd sense of, um, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it, but I don't mind looking after sick people. And at the back of my mind, I'm always thinking if this was my mother or my brother or my sister or someone I love, I would hope that they would be taken care of as well as I take care of people because I know I do a good job. So when I compare how I felt that very first time and how I feel about it now, very different, very, very different. And any dignity that I ever felt that I had lost in the process of um, leaving home and settling in a new country is well and truly restored, I have to say. I don't feel as though I'm, any less. In fact, I think I've had a lot of growth by being a nurse, seeing people in their most vulnerable state, like I said, when they're sick, um, and then also experiencing the gratitude that people have after you look after them is very, very humbling. Um, and I think it's probably made me less shy as a person. People who knew me as a child know that I used to be very, very, very shy. But being a nurse um, somehow made me come out of myself because when you see people respond to you a certain way, maybe because you've helped them through an illness, and then you think, wow, I did that. I must be okay. I must not be an awful person. There must be some good in me. It makes you feel like, well, actually, I can talk to people, I can interact with people and not feel so shy because, well, they're responding in a positive way to me. So, yes, I feel like my dignity has been restored 100 times over. Anything I ever felt that I thought was stripping me of my dignity is well and truly gone. So that's the story of, I guess, losing your dignity when you first become an immigrant, and then how the whole um, story can turn around and become a truly beautiful one, because I think it is truly beautiful now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that story. And if you did, please tell me what you think. Drop a comment below, like, subscribe, because I would love to keep telling you these stories and sharing with you about this journey. There's so much that I can tell you. And I hope you keep following with me and interacting with me, telling me what you think about this and whether it opens your eyes a little bit about what happens to us when we leave home, when we go to foreign countries and start a new life, the experiences that we have. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.